Thank you for joining us, everybody. We're going to give it a few more minutes before we kick off, just to allow people to find and remember their Zoom passwords. But we'll get started shortly. Right. Well, we'll get started now, and hopefully, have some more people trickle in as we go. But thank you so much for joining us, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm the Partnerships Director at the Young Arts Fundraisers. I am a white man with brown hair and glasses, sitting in a blurred hotel room background at the moment. It is brilliant to have you all here with us today. The Young Arts Fundraisers exists to support early career fundraisers, people who are passionate about what they do, but don't always have the networks, the resources, and the community around them to help them grow. And that's why partnerships like this are really, really important to us. When we find an organization that genuinely shares our mission and that offers something of real value to us, we want to shout about it. And the Achates community is one of those organizations. Today's sessions is going to be focused on something that we hope will resonate with a lot of you, the real everyday challenges that come with being early in your fundraising career, whether that's building confidence, finding your footing, navigating relationships with senior stakeholders. These are challenges that all of us have faced at one point in our career. And the wonderful team at Achates Community today are going to explore how you can use their platform to help meet those challenges head on. So without much further ado, I will head over to the wonderful team there.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Vicky Grace. I'm a white woman with blonde hair and a bright pink shirt, and I am sitting in front of a sort of purplish grey bookcase. And I am Achates Director of Recruitment and Organisational Change. If I can just ask my colleague to introduce herself, and then I will kick us off today. Deborah.
Thanks, Vicky. Hello, everybody. My name's Deborah Larwood. I am the Director of Income Generation here at Achates. I am a white woman with brown hair, wearing a white shirt, actually sitting in a white office. As I say, I'm the Director of Income Generation, so I look after all of our work in the sort of realms of fundraising and earned income generation, and it's really brilliant to be with you today.
Thank you, Deborah. So I'm just going to share some slides, and essentially what Deborah and I will do today is talk you through Achates Community, who we are, what it is, and then also how we think it might be able to support you to target some of those key challenges that we understand that young arts fundraisers like yourselves are facing. So we will be moving between some slides and also our faces, and also sharing the platform itself so you can see exactly what we're talking about, and how you might use it should you choose to come on board as members to support your journey. So I'm going to share some slides. Fingers crossed I can manage this. The team have very kindly supported me through. So we should now have some slides which are showing. Fingers crossed. I'm looking to Deborah for a thumbs up. We can see them there. So this is who we are today. So Achates Community, I'm here to talk you through that. So what is Achates Community? So I'm firstly going to start by telling you what is Achates, because you may not know who we are and why on earth we're doing this. So Achates is a cultural consultancy. We were founded just over 12 years ago with the sole purpose of supporting the culture and heritage sector to develop what we call resilience with integrity. So what that means is that our work spans strategy and business planning, earned and contributed income, and what we mean by contributed income is fundraised income, recruitment and organisational change. And at the centre of everything we do is our distinctive purpose-led, audience-informed approach, which means that organisations who can define the work they do and the impact they have with and for their audiences can then use that as a central decision-making point to inform all aspects of their work across all of those different sections that I mentioned. Until a few years ago, the majority of our work was done through one-to-one consultancy. So working personally with each individual organisation to support them at a moment often of transition, of change, sometimes of challenge. But a few years ago, we wanted to take it one step further, and we wanted to provide a way in which the entire sector could access quality support as we all navigate the seemingly increasing complexities of the world that we're operating in. And I don't need to tell those of us working in fundraising of the increasing complexities of the world we're working in. And that's where Achates Community came in. So we like to think of Achates Community as a complete revolution in culture sector support. It is an online platform, which we will show you shortly, that is exclusively for cultural sector charity employees. The content has been created specifically by us from our experience over those 12 years for the cultural sector. So it offers 3 pillars of support. The first is our currently 60 but ever growing program of masterclasses covering the full spectrum of topics involved in running a cultural sector organisation. So there are modules there on business planning, all aspects of fundraising, which Deborah is going to take us through in a bit more detail later, financial management, working with a board, ethics in funding, big topic for us all at the moment, and everything in between. And we are constantly responding to the sector. In fact, just this morning, I've booked in for another recording session in August on a whole suite more masterclasses that just continually be added to that programme. That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is our Purposeful Leader program, and I will talk in much more detail about that at a slightly later point in the session. But that is a completely free access, fully included in your membership, self-nominating leadership program, which runs across the period of a year for members to develop their network, develop their leadership skills through that purpose-led lens. And the third pillar is a community. It's an online platform built with chat functions, critical thinking provocations, opportunities to connect with your peers from across the sector. Our membership base is cross art form, cross country. Every part of the United Kingdom is represented on that platform, with members spanning from fundraising assistants through chief executives and board members. So it's a really diverse community, and there is opportunity to connect there. It's a subscription platform, so £500 a year or £50 a month, but we are making a discount available to anyone in the Young Arts Fundraisers network, as well as a free trial as well for all members. So full information will be shared afterwards, but it is a support that fully encompassed within that one fee there. So that's what it is. That's why we do it. But how can it actually help you? So today, what we're going to do is really hone in on how Achates Community can help you build your fundraising expertise to develop your arts fundraising career. The clue was in the title. We have not falsely advertised. So the YAF team have very kindly, when we started this partnership, very kindly presented us with some example areas that, based on their conversations with you all, based on their knowledge of the work that you all do, that you as young arts fundraisers are juggling with. So we're going to show you in real time how Achates Community can help you tackle those. So the key areas that we're going to focus on are, firstly, how to build skills in different areas of fundraising. So that might be an area you're currently working on, but you want to go deeper, or it might be an area you're interested in and you want to sort of expand your portfolio or think about your next job that moves you more into that. Today, we're going to focus specifically on major gift fundraising and trust and foundations, but the platform does cover the full gamut, including statutory funding, individual giving from memberships, legacies, patron schemes, mass giving, as well as modules on corporate partnerships, membership, and also commercial and earned income. So we're just going to go for two today because we've only got an hour, but it's all there, and Deborah will show you where you could access those as well. We're also going to show you how you can build on these specific areas to really understand the skills and competencies needed to succeed in each area of fundraising. So what might you need if you want to bring trusts and foundations into your portfolio? What skills do you want to work on and really brush up on? What about if it's corporate? What might you want to do in that? So Achates Community can really show you what that looks like, give you the knowledge, but also show you what skills you might want to build on. As Alex, I think, referenced in his introduction, we'll also be talking about how you might use Achates Community to navigate those sometimes seemingly daunting relationships with trustees or your executive boards or your development committees. So we'll talk about how you can get clarity on what they do, what are they there for, how might they operate, what role should they play in fundraising, and how can you have that conversation. And then lastly, we'll really hone in on that question of a network. How do you use Achates Community to build those peers, those partners, those sort of colleagues that you can reach out to, either to say, oh my God, today's been really hard. Is it hard for you too? Or to say, I don't know the answer to this. Might you know it? So those are the things we're going to kind of talk about today within the platform. So I'm going to now hand over to Deborah, who's going to talk to us about some of those scenarios and take us through how the platform can help. Deborah.
Lovely. Thank you, Vicky. Okay, so we're going to speak specifically about perhaps two key fundraising disciplines or areas of fundraising and how the platform can really help to support your work, whether you're currently working in that space or it's an area that perhaps you're looking to move into. Those two areas are going to be major donor giving and also trusts and foundations. But before that, I thought it would be helpful to just talk a little bit about the wider context within which you're all working, because no matter what your role is, and perhaps you are tasked with working to a specific fundraising income line, whilst it's of course about focusing on the organisation you're working in, your beneficiaries, the art form, the geographical location, we also have to be incredibly aware of that wider environment and context within which we are working and operating. Plus, there's also lots to learn, I think, by looking up and out. And for me, the Achates Community Platform really gives you that opportunity to think in that sort of more holistic way and perhaps in broader terms about the sector and the challenges and opportunities and the different ways that you might approach fundraising. So, in terms of the sort of context setting, I'm now showing you the platform. So this may be the first time that you've actually seen the Achates Community Platform. So this is what it looks like. You can see running down the left-hand navigation bar, the Purposeful Leader Programme, which Vicky referenced, but also the learning modules. It's worth just saying that this bank of learning modules is growing all the time. Vicky just mentioned that, we're in the process of developing and recording additional content. So this will be added to and evolved and developed, but it starts to give you a sense, I suppose, of the range of topics and sort of areas of support available. But to go back to that point about context, It's no, well, we're all absolutely aware, I know, that we are working and operating in a really challenging landscape for cultural sector organisations. And this is, of course, manifest and prevalent as well in arts fundraising. We are looking at, a context of rising costs within our respective organisations. We're looking at increased pressure, perhaps on fundraising targets. And unfortunately, we know that the philanthropy landscape, particularly the cultural philanthropy landscape, is just not keeping pace with that rising need and requirement for contributed income or fundraising. We also know, of course, that statutory funding continues to be in decline, standstill, which of course is real terms cuts. There is exceptional competition for trust and foundation funding. And as a result, certainly we're seeing in the work we do within the sector, an increased focus and emphasis on channels such as individual giving across the whole spectrum of types of individual giving and corporate giving as well. That's quite interesting that we've certainly seen more organisations turn their attention back to corporate giving, particularly ones who perhaps have shelved it or parked it in one way or another, sort of over the period of the pandemic. We're really seeing a lot more eyes on what those opportunities look like. Despite all those challenges, I think there's also a real opportunity for all of you as income generation professionals, an opportunity to lead within your organisation, no matter where you sit within the structure of your organisation and staff teams. And Achates Community can really give you the tools to be those leaders and importantly, to lead with confidence. Because ultimately, as you'll all know, fundraising is not a means to an end. It's not simply the financial resource required to deliver the work. It's a strategic priority. It has to be fundamentally aligned and in step with your organisation's purpose. And in order to enable you to draw in that investment to deliver the work and in turn further the purpose. So for us at Achates, across the entirety of the Achates Community Platform, and indeed all of the work that we do in the sector, we absolutely start with purpose. We start with the art and culture and the purpose that your organisation is serving, and also real clarity around who you're serving that purpose for and with. And for me, that really is the North Star. Once you've clarified that and you have that shared understanding of that internally, not only does it all ensure that all of your colleagues are pulling in the same direction, but it also enables you to unpack and understand where those fundraising and contributed income opportunities may lie. And this is really where being a leader comes in. Within the platform, you'll see here along the top, we've got the UK cultural sector policy content. That really is a sort of foundational material that would be really valuable, I think, to move through so that you're operating with that context and history and understanding of why the sector functions in the way that it does, why the economic structures are such, but also why this focus on purpose is really integral to driving fundraised income. And in our module here that you can see on working with purpose, there are a number of masterclasses here which essentially will guide you through that process of articulating the organisation's purpose. Now, we'd absolutely encourage you to use those tools and not do it in isolation, but actually draw your colleagues from perhaps participation, artistic, engagement, marketing into a dialogue to actually move through that process of articulating the organisation's purpose and effectively the theory of change. So, for example, you can see here we've got the audience-informed approach, how to articulate value and impact. This masterclass really gives you inspiration and food for thought as to the different ways that you can talk about and articulate impact beyond the intrinsic, the feel good, and the economic value of culture. But I'm going to just go to the theory of change masterclass here. Each masterclass, it's worth saying, is around about the 20 to 25-minute mark. You don't need to sit and watch the screen. You can absolutely listen to the audio on a walk, for example. That's a really nice way, I think, to take that content on board. but each masterclass is accompanied by tools and resources. And in this theory of change and purpose tool, what you can see here are templates for developing logic models. So the logical unpacking of how you are working with an audience to create impact, change, and outputs. But I'm going to just very quickly show you the framework of the theory of change. So you can see here that the resources are downloadable, which means that you can then work within them. So this is the theory of change outputs and outcomes resource. So this is a tool to help you to really see and to understand what purpose and function that theory of change has, how those different pieces fit together. And again, these are really helpful resources for when you are talking to other people who perhaps are not members on the platform and don't have that, ready access to the tools and materials. The logic model template is also a really valuable framework for when you're talking to colleagues who perhaps are in education or engagement roles, because it enables you to have a conversation whereby you are defining the audiences that they're creating and delivering that work for and with, unpacking and illuminating where those audiences are coming from, understanding therefore what the strategies are to engage successfully with that audience. And then, of course, you can start to plug in what those projects and programs are in real terms and what you're going to measure and monitor and evaluate to know that that's working. So that's just an example of one of the tools there within that theory of change masterclass and module section. But as you can see, it starts to essentially stand next to you and sort of step by step support you through unpacking that process and leading on that process internally. The next area I thought we might usefully talk about is major donor giving. Now, of course, as I mentioned earlier, individual giving represents a whole range of different kinds of philanthropy and giving. Some of those giving channels might be more transactional if we're thinking about membership schemes where there are benefits to be transacted. But of course, individual giving also moves into that philanthropic and transformational giving as well. And so there are different types of philanthropy. And whilst the principles are broadly speaking the same, as I said earlier, this is for me really about opening up your organisation, essentially to find and connect with people who share your commitment to the work you're doing, to commitment to the impact that you're creating. There are obviously nuances and very specific approaches and ways of fundraising which pertain to different types of giving. And within the platform, you can see here the individual giving module, which has got a real range of content. So it moves from major giving at the top here in module 8 into patron schemes in module 9. We've got legacy giving in there. And then module 11 is looking at those perhaps mass giving schemes. And by that, we're thinking about anything from point of sale donations to donation boxes to direct mail campaigns. So there's a real range of tools on there that you could absolutely pick and choose from depending on what your priority might be. And I should as well say that actually all of this content is designed to support you, whether you are looking to, alongside your organisation, embark upon a new fundraising strategy or campaign or type of giving. But equally, it's as valuable if you've got an existing patron scheme, let's say, or major giving programme, and you're looking to interrogate its effectiveness. Perhaps you might be thinking about how to maximise that scheme, push it further, develop new facets within that programme. This content is designed to enable you to use it for both of those purposes. But I'm going to talk about major donor giving. So as I said, whether or not your organisation already has a major donor programme, you'll find the major donor masterclasses and tools and resources will help you to unpack the rationale for giving and also enable you to develop hopefully a more comprehensive and certainly a more robust framework and strategy against which to review and build your major donor offer and also diversify your prospect pool. One of the things that we're really passionate about at Achates is philanthropy. And, we are, of course, operating within a sector whereby a lot of individual giving has historically been predicated upon that transactional relationship. If we think back to the organisations within the sector who perhaps were the first to create those patron schemes and those membership programs, they were by and large built upon the basis of demand. So organisations that had sell-out shows, sell-out exhibitions, absolutely leveraged that scarcity and have woven it into some of the big sort of patron benefactor programs that still absolutely thrive today. But of course, there are some challenges that come through forging relationships in that more transactional manner. For some organizations, the challenge might be that they run out of headroom, they've run out of benefits to give when trying to extend or increase those gifts. For other organizations, the challenge might be that quite simply, they don't have the sort of sell out aspect that they can usefully or effectively leverage in major giving. So we really advocate for a philanthropy and an impact philanthropy approach to giving so that you can absolutely ensure that long into the future, you're seeding and building relationships that are based on impact. Impact is always scalable, and therefore you can continue to drive giving and deepen relationships in the process. That's not to say that you shouldn't reciprocate your supporters, and you'll absolutely find that in the masterclasses that there are strategies to enable you to definitely still offer those supporters something which demonstrates that you are grateful and that you value their relationship, but that it's not predicated on a certain number of tickets, etc., etc. So within the major donor masterclasses, you'll see here that it's broken into sort of 4 sections. It unpacks sort of prospect base and donor motivation. So that's really about helping you to stand a little bit further back from your organization and to think more broadly about the huge range of reasons why a major donor may want to support your work and give to your organization. Within that masterclass, you'll also find some inspiration as to how to find those people and how to really push beyond the typical cultural sector donors. And that impact framework is a really valuable tool to enable you to do that because it helps you to start to find adjacent organizations that are not working in culture, but might be driving similar types of impact and might be working with similar types of communities who may therefore be interested in the work that your organization is doing. But the one thing that I wanted to really pull out and show you is the donor offer and reciprocation program. So as I said earlier, this is very much about a sort of how to reciprocate and build relationships of reciprocity with your major supporters. And this is one example of a framework that you can utilize to help guide the thinking and also to be really creative, actually, in terms of how you can usefully build relationships of loyalty and really take those donors on a journey with you. So you can see here in this example template that you might have, these sort of indicative grant levels or donation levels may need to be tweaked and scaled. But when we think about how you build that offer and reciprocation, we can think about that in terms of the program, which area of impact are you looking to associate a gift with? How might you support, recognize and celebrate that gift? What is the stakeholder relationship looking like? So how might they contribute beyond financial support? And what events or access might you open up to those donors? And this tool, for example, gives you a framework within which to essentially plan scalable reciprocation activity. So that gives you hopefully a sense of some of the sort of ways in which the major donor sort of materials and support can help to guide not just sort of, starting from scratch, but also help to sort of guide thinking and tweaking of the activity and the work that you're doing. And I was saying earlier that, for me, income generation professionals are absolutely leaders in their organizations. And I think this is a good example of where there's an opportunity for you in your respective roles to offer provocations which are informed by the wider sector and sort of ideas and inspiration from things that are happening outside of your immediate sphere. And it also enables you, I think, to play a role within your organization in terms of supporting your senior leadership team to have renewed confidence and to think about their role perhaps a little bit differently. And to think about the way that they forge relationships with donors differently too. I'm going to move us on now to trust and foundations, which is the other area that we felt it would be perhaps quite useful to think about. As I mentioned earlier, the landscape that we're operating within, of course, is incredibly challenging. I think it's fair to say that competition for grants is higher than ever. For example, the Paul Hamlyn Foundation, I know for the Arts Fund, one of the most recent rounds, they had reported an overall success rate of only 7% for arts organisations. We know that the volume of applications has more than doubled. And, you know, there are funders who are closing early because of that sort of influx of applications, and their capacity to review is just not quite meeting the demand. And added to that, for those of you working in trust and foundation fundraising, the time required to build those applications and to do that work, you know, cannot be understated. It is a very time intensive process, and a big commitment for your organization to make in terms of its resources. Therefore, you need to focus on the most strategic opportunities, and certainly the opportunities where you can see with absolute clarity that the funder's priorities are in absolute step and alignment with either your organizational purpose or indeed the purpose of the project or area of work that you might be looking to put in front of that funder. Some trust and foundations, of course, operate quite differently to others. The ones, you know, I mentioned the Paul Hamlyn Foundation. There are vehicles which are very sort of formulaic, formula based, like businesses, very clear in their parameters and their process. There are other trusts and foundations, of course, that actually look a little bit more like major donors. They might be the vehicle for personal, high net worth individual giving activities. And of course, it's really important, therefore, to understand what those decision-making structures look like in order for you to be able to formulate the best strategy to make the approach to those funders. So relationship fundraising is vital, you know, thinking about network mapping, thinking about communication strategies, and other types of cultivation. What we've absolutely seen in the trust and foundation space, I think, is that what funders are looking for has really shifted over recent years. The same is also true of many statutory services, and you'll know this, I'm sure, when thinking about the likes of Arts Council England and, for example, how the MPO process has really shifted from what was historically a rhetoric-based argument to what is absolutely now a theory of change-based argument. Hence our recommendation for that working with purpose within the Achates membership platform. That really is a foundation, I think, certainly for trusts and foundations and other income sources. And as an income generation professional, of course, your job is to find the meeting points, the crossover between your organization's work and ambitions and the ambitions of a funder. You know, you're leading a process of effectively translation. And so within the Achates Community Platform, there is resource and support here to help you, first of all, understand what that context is within the trust and foundation and statutory funding community, but also how to really think about and approach creating a theory of change based fundraising application. So how to create a narrative which is logical, which is robust, and which is compelling. So you can see within here, within the masterclasses, that there is a master bid and cultivating trusts masterclass. Within this particular session, you'll see that from the learning objectives, it's about how to, once you've got your theory of change, how to apply that to building a really comprehensive and compelling and robust funding application. And the tools and resources included here are, for example, a budget template, The project master bid template really is a sort of blow by blow, how to structure your bid, how to think about those component parts, how to approach the sort of presentation of impact. So thinking about the outputs, the outcomes, what you're going to measure and why. So again, these are very practical tools that you could absolutely use to interrogate a bid that maybe you've recently developed, but equally tools that you can use if you are sort of at the starting point of, being tasked with perhaps developing a funding application. And these are all really designed to help you help a funder to see how investing in your work enables them to really create that change and impact that they want to see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now with the platform and hand over to Vicky to talk about working with boards.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I should also note, having been a fundraiser myself for a long time before joining Achates, I have used some of those templates that Deborah is referencing when I was working in a couple of different theatres. So I can personally vouch for how useful they are, especially that master bid template saved my life on a few occasions back in the day. So yeah, really useful, practical tools as well as that theory there, as Deborah talked us through. So I'm going to sort of think about how, we work with boards, we work with fundraising committees, because as fundraisers, as you very well know, we are often called upon to work with those at all levels of the organisation, not least our boards, our executive leadership, our development committees, and doing this for the first few times, I think, can feel quite daunting, and it can be quite tricky to understand exactly when you're asking for their involvement, what that involvement should look like. How do you know if they're overstepping a little bit? How you might get a sense that it feels a bit much, but you don't really know why, or you might feel that they're not delivering enough. But again, how do you find the language to communicate that? And I think before I dive into sort of sharing the screen and everything, it's just sort of laying out some principles there, which is that it's really important to remember that a relationship with the Board of Trustees and or a development committee, for some of you, a committee may be a subsection of your board, for others it may be something quite separate. But the same thing kind of goes there, in that it's a partnership. So you need to give it the same sort of attention and consideration as you would any of the partnerships that you will work on, whether that's in corporate partnerships, with trusts, with donors, etc. So I think the kind of key starting point there is to make sure that everyone at board level and below, so across the organisation, understands that fundraising is a collective responsibility. So what that doesn't mean is that everyone is responsible for every piece of fundraising administration, or everyone makes every ask, or everyone makes every decision. That would drive you all crazy. You all need to you're the pros, you need to get on with it. But what it means is that everyone has a role to play in contributing to this organisation generating income. As Deborah put it earlier, fundraising is not a means to an end. It's not just get the cash in so that the real work can happen. It's a cycle. It's part of the living, breathing entity that is your organization. And as such, everyone has a role to play. So what that kind of means when it comes to working with your board is really making sure that you're clear and that you're on what those expectations are. What is their role? What does it mean to be part of a board in terms of fundraising? What does it mean to be on a development committee? What do those terms of references look like? What is it actually that is expected of people? And making sure that that's baked in right the way through. That should be considered when you're recruiting for board members. So when your teams, when you're reporting to a director who's reporting to a chief executive, it's making sure that that culture is established. And that's what we would consider to be the building blocks of establishing what we would call a fundraising culture. So that means an organization whereby every person can see that they have a role to play in fundraising, whether that's someone that is welcoming at the door of the organization, right the way through to the board. And that needs to be kind of integral. So if I just sort of share on my screen sort of the platform, just to see where, so I can show you kind of how that sits. There it is. Hopefully you can see the platform. Looking to Deborah and Alex for a nod. Brilliant. So there's a couple of different ways that this shows up within the platform. And the first here is looking at this module, boards and development committees. We have not given these cryptic titles. It's very clear what they are. And so within this, it takes us through kind of every element here. Again, it starts with that piece around creating a fundraising culture. And that applies very much to your board, but it also applies across the organization. So that module will take you through what it means to be an organization with culture, with fundraising, excuse me, baked into the culture. It then starts to take you through that process. So working with a board, it's a partnership like any other. You need to think about, okay, what is their role? How can I make sure that then my relationship with them builds gradually, builds over time, is invested in? Doesn't mean you show up at every board meeting, doesn't mean you email every single board member every single day, but helps you to go, how do I identify those allies? How do I build that? And how do I help them understand the advocacy role that they play for this organization? Now, I understand within the Young Arts Fundraisers Network, we're going to have organisations represented that are all sorts of different scales. Some of you might be a sole fundraiser. Some of you might be one fundraiser within a really big team, within a really big organisation. So advocacy and board engagement will look slightly different depending on your scale of your organisation, because the need's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be different resource, but the same principle applies, establishing that fundraising culture, building that relationship over time, and really having that clarity is absolutely critical. And then what this module takes us through, you can see here in 17.3, is understanding that ultimately, because boards are ultimately responsible, they have the legal responsibility for this organisation, it is your job as fundraisers to provide them with robust data. They need to know what's going on in the landscape, coming back down to Deborah's very first point here. This is why it's important you understand that wider policy, that wider context, because you need to be able to ensure they understand that, present it. It's not just about saying, you know, how many conversations have we had with board members where they say, such and such an organisation just raised £1 million from a corporate. Why can't we do that? And you probably can't do that, not because you're not capable, not because it's not possible, but because you're not operating at the same scale as that organisation. Maybe you're not in the same location. Maybe you don't have a history with that particular organisation. There's all sorts of reasons, but unless you can really ground that in the wider context, in the impact that your organisation is having and who you are, all that you're going to be saying is, no, 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 when really what you need to be saying is, no, that's not for us for these reasons, but here are the avenues that are available to us, and here's what we need from you in order to do that. So this module, using that the masterclass setup that Deborah mentioned, will take you through the building blocks of that. We'll then introduce that, how you apply that to sort of successful committees. How do you recruit to a development committee? Where does the board sit within that? How are you bringing in external volunteers who may not sit at board level? What does that look like? And then how do you work with them? What do those ongoing communications look like? And some of the kind of tools that we have in these modules include things like sample letters that you can send to committee members that you want to join. They have things about, decision-making frameworks that you can populate in order to help you have those conversations with board members. So if you're preparing for a meeting with a member of the board about fundraising, how you work to that. And then the second element of working with a board or a committee or those senior volunteers is represented very much in this module here, module 25, purpose-led governance. And what this is actually a module that has been written for trustees. So there's a couple of ways you could engage with this. You could encourage your board members or one of your board members to join you as a member on the Achates Community Platform. And I don't know if you've spotted, but in every module we've shown you, there's a little video at the top here that says Introduction for Trustees. And each of those videos is a short few minutes explaining why it's relevant for a trustee to pay attention. So why is it relevant for a trustee to pay attention to individual giving? What does it mean for them, etc. This module in particular really talks through what it is to be a trustee. So as well as them signing up and being a partner with you on this, I also think it's just really good practice as fundraisers to have this knowledge. So the first section there literally talks about the legal responsibilities of being a trustee. It is the nuts and bolts. What does it mean within the context of the Charity Commission? If you are, depending on the country that you're based in, we all have a Charity Commission. That's all relevant. What what are the financial responsibilities, but how does it go wider? Our boards are not only responsible for making sure we have enough money, they are responsible for making sure we deliver against purpose, against charitable objectives. So understanding that as a fundraiser who has to work with boards means that when you're going in to speak to them, you're in their shoes, right? This is where that relationship element comes in. If you're going to work with a donor, if you're going to make an ask to a donor, you're going to pay attention to their motivation, their perspective. Why do they want to have this conversation? Same thing applies from a trustee. Remember what it is they're there to do, why they're there. That also helps you understand if maybe they're overstepping a little bit and they're getting a little bit too involved in the fundraising. Actually, go back to that, really look at what their responsibilities are. I'm not saying then wave the Charity Commission guidelines in their face, but it helps you structure your narrative, structure your conversation beyond, oh, I just think they're overstepping. And that's what this module does. If you're a trustee, it will show you how to be a trustee through a purpose-led lens. So if any of you are thinking of expanding your own careers and your own portfolios by taking on trusteeships, which are very recommended, and you would all be in high demand as fundraisers, this would help you kind of ground your knowledge in that. But also, if you're reporting to a board of trustees or you're working with the board of trustees, this will just help you see things from their perspective. And by understanding where they're coming from, understanding how they think, you can then influence them in the way that you need to, because you're not going in sort of without data, without backup, without grounding in what you're saying. So that's kind of where our work with boards and with trustees kind of sits within the platform. So there's lots of different ways to do that. So what I thought we could talk about now is just that sort of moving out of the masterclasses and moving into how Achates Community can help you develop your network, develop your knowledge base. So I'm just going to dive back into my slides. If you forgive me for my multitasking, I think I'm doing all right there. You should now, you see the slide, brilliant. So this is our fifth sort of scenario here. How do you use Achates Community to develop your network? So to be a fundraiser, it's a funny one sometimes because inherently it's a sociable job. Your job is to is to write, it's to translate, it's to work with donors, build relationships with colleagues. It's a very sociable thing that we do. But at times it can feel really lonely, even if you're in a big team. And it can feel tricky, especially nowadays, as Deborah said, it's a complex environment. So whilst that has lots of opportunity that Deborah sort of mentioned there around leading, it's sort of how do you know that you're on the right path? Because also I found as fundraisers, sometimes we can get a little bit inward looking. It's very easy because we're so rightly fixated on supporting our organizations to solve its problems, to move ahead, to contribute, to keep delivering. So how do we break that cycle? How do we make sure that we are talking to others, whether that's because we don't have fundraisers in our team or we feel it, or we do, but we just need someone to reach out. We just want to look up and out, as Deborah put it at the beginning. So we've got a couple of different ways that you can do that, and that we've really set up Achates Community to foster that connection across the sector. We talked for a long time internally about what we should call it, what should it be, and community was the only obvious answer for us. So it's literally baked into the title there, what it means to us to create this community of income generating professionals within the sector. So you've got a couple of things you can do, and the first of which is our chat channel. So I'll come back in and show you on the platform in a second. But we've got channels within there where you can share thoughts, you can share provocations, you can ask questions. Our team also every day someone will post something in there. It might be something exciting and juicy that we've come across. So Deborah posted something brilliant recently about a new inclusive festival that was being launched in Liverpool. So we shared that, or it might be a question that we're pondering around. I posted something recently around how do you make time for professional development? How do you work on that way? How do you make that work? So it really varies. It might be if we've heard something been shared with us about an upcoming announcement, we put it in there. It's sort of our sharing information with you, but also our community sharing information back. And those channels are split into two sort of streams. We have what's called the think tank, which is very much sort of topical thinking, critical thinking, what's out there, what's going on in the sector, how do we push forward, and what we call purpose in action, which is then how do we lead with purpose, how do we move with purpose through this sector, both for ourselves, our teams, our beneficiaries, our colleagues. So broadly speaking, those are our channels. there is a bit of cross-pollination. That's okay. We want it to be natural, but it's an opportunity for any member to jump in to share. What you can also do, you can message members directly. So you can hop on if you see someone that you think, oh my God, they're doing my job just in a different organization, or they're doing the job I'd quite like to do in the future. Then you can contact them, you can send them a message, you can ask to connect, and people will kind of have built connections in that way. So I'm just going to show you where that all shows up on the platform. I hope you will forgive my jumping around, but it's just, I don't want to make sure that you can understand exactly what we're talking about. So you've got the platform here. So as Deborah mentioned, these are all of our learning modules and masterclasses. And then what you've got here, these are our chat channels. So let's see what's happening in the think tank today, shall we? It's taking a little while though. So this is one of our colleagues, Naomi. She's sharing some reflections from attending the Arts Professional Business of the Arts conference. So what did she learn? What did she understand? What do people think about that? Also got one of our colleagues yesterday posting about the new chair of Arts Council England. So just giving you a chance to see that news if you didn't already, asking some questions there. Purpose and action is there. If you wanted to contact someone, as you can see here, this is our member list. So if I wanted to write to Naomi, I just click on that. She pops up and I click on chat and I can send her a message. So you can do that with any of the members listed there. You can see some of our brilliant members who have been active on there already, which is always nice. So that's all the different ways you can talk to people. The other point to now talk about is our Purposeful Leader program. So when we set up Achates Community, it was really important to us that leadership wasn't gatekept, that it wasn't something you had to apply for if you wanted to sort of develop your leadership skills, if you wanted to kind of think critically with your peers and your colleagues. And so we've developed the Purposeful Leader program. It runs monthly. So you sign up on the platform. There is an events page that you just RSVP. We launch a cohort roughly every 3 months. So whenever you join up, there's a new one coming fairly soon that you can join up. There's actually one starting next month. So if you sign up in the next couple of weeks, you will be ready to go. And what that is, it's a monthly Zoom. So they are usually around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. There is an option depending on what works for your schedule. And you join on Zoom and it's facilitated by myself or my colleague Naomi that I mentioned there. And it takes you through the concepts of purposeful leadership and applies those to real scenarios. So we have sessions on there about leading with care and resilience. We have sessions on there about how you might bring a purpose-led approach to your business models, to leading in a crisis, to building your leadership toolkit. There's plenty of sessions. It's completely self-selecting, as I said. So we have members on there who are currently in leadership positions, i.e., hierarchically speaking, they have those titles. And we also have people who are just starting out on their career journey. So it's a really collaborative space. You meet with the same cohort once a month for 9 months. We don't have any sessions in August or December for obvious reasons, because everyone disappears and tries to fit everything into 2 weeks. And then we work together on that. It's a facilitated conversation. The notes are shared afterwards on the platform, so you can kind of get involved there. We then have an advanced program. So once you finish the first program, you join the advanced program. Again, self-selecting. It's not, I don't decide if you're ready. If you finished it, you're ready. And that then takes those concepts even deeper and starts applying it to sort of topics around organizational culture and organizational change. So it's a really robust sort of platform there. And it's all just sitting there waiting for you right on the platform. Deborah, do you want to take us through what's next and how to move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of how to move forward, we've got a few thoughts that we wanted to share with you.
Deborah, sorry to interrupt. We just can't see your slide at the moment. I think we can see a Word document. Is that what you meant to share?
Strange. Apologies. Let me see if I can try again.
If you'd like, I think I've got it here. So
Great. Okay, so one of the things that I think we're really conscious of is that, for a number of our members, some people are paying for their membership personally, and that's the investment they're making in their professional development. For other people, they're looking to their organisation to cover the costs of their membership. So what we thought might be really helpful as a resource that you could use if useful is to put together a little template really that you can share with your line manager to help you to make that case for your investment. So that's something that we've shared with Alex and the team that I hope will make its way to you. There's also actually on the Achates website, there's a section about Achates Community where you'll find a little video of our director Caroline talking about the 10 principles of Achates Community that really underpins the programme. So that might be a helpful tool to use as well. The next step, of course, would then be to sign up. And we're really pleased to be able to offer YAF members a discount code. Again, I'm sure more information will be shared on that in a moment or two. And then it's worth you just being aware that when you do join the platform, the very first thing you're asked to do is to complete a little, quite quick quiz. But essentially, it's the way of us understanding what your priorities are, what you're interested in, how much time you've got to dedicate to this professional development. And then we go away and we build you a personal development plan. So each month we will guide you as to which masterclasses to move through, which tools and resources to use. But not only that, we also then book in every quarter a check-in session. So essentially, 4 times a year, you'll have a session with one of the team where you can use that time as you want to, really. You could use it to talk about specific things that you're working through on the platform. Some of our members use that time to talk about a very live issue that they're navigating in their sort of day-to-day work. But essentially what we're trying to do through that sort of quarterly check-in is to give you the opportunity to just interrogate further your learning and to ensure that you feel really supported across the course of your membership year. So I think that probably brings us to the end of our slides and things we wanted to share with you. I'm going to hand back to Alex.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Deborah, Vicky. That was fantastic. A really great in-depth look at the platform, some incredible top tips on how to use it. We really appreciate that. We do have a little bit of time for questions from the audience. If anyone has one, jump into the chat and pop them there now. I can see we've already got one that's come through, which is fantastic. So the question is, how active is the community? I've joined platforms before and they've felt a little bit quiet after a few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as with any social platform, this one is slightly outside of our control because we're not we're on there posting. I think it comes in, to be totally transparent, it comes in waves. We often have periods of time where it is super responsive. For example, I think one of my best examples, which was really funny because it happened within about an hour, was one of my colleagues musing about AI in bid writing, and we had probably about 2 hours of people constantly just talking and asking questions. And then we have periods where it's more people receiving information than engaging. So definitely comes in waves. It's building all the time. In terms of activity, our team are on there every single day, posting often multiple times a day, provocations, thoughts in the chat. So that is sort of always being kept fresh. We're stoking the fire, as it were, and keeping that live. And people kind of jump in when they are looking to engage in something, and when they're not. Anecdotally, we know of a lot of members who have connected through the platform and have then had offline conversations and are picking up on things. The Purposeful Leader community is very active because I think particularly because they meet every month for 9 months. And so they are off having their own conversations, and there's been people meeting up because they've realized they're in the same city and things like that. So it's an ever evolving, ever growing organic thing. I can't sort of say it's everybody's messaging every day, but it's growing and it's living and it's breathing, and we're constantly tending to our baby as it were.
Yeah, and I loved seeing in the think tank that people were sharing kind of articles or information that was relevant to them. There's often so much information out there that we get, news articles. It's difficult to know, okay, what do I filter on? What's going to be relevant to my role? So to see people sharing that, I think is fantastic. Well, I'll tell you what, we've got 2 minutes left, so I'll just do our quick close. But I wanted to say again, thank you so much to you guys for your time. It was a brilliant session, and I hope everyone on the call is feeling as enthused as I am. As these guys mentioned, we do have an exclusive 10% discount on an Achates Community subscription for YAF members, which is absolutely incredible. We'll be sharing the details in an email immediately following this event on how you can access it, but you will be able to use the discount code YAF10 to access that. And please do remember, it's only available for those working in culture organisations. But again, we will highlight that. And as the team mentioned, sometimes the trickiest part isn't deciding whether it's right for you, it's getting that senior leadership buy-in. So we will be providing the resources that you can use to help explain what this community is, why it's so important, and why it's going to benefit yourself professionally and the organization you work for. We've also recorded this event and we'll be sharing that. So if you think, oh, they spoke about some templates, I can't remember where to find them, don't worry, you'll be able to go back and find out exactly where they are on the platform using that recording. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Vicky, Deborah, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. And yeah, cheerio, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Everyone.